What's up, guys? Tim Little. Welcome back to Tactical Bass. In today's video, we are talking about fall bass fishing, the fall transition from summer to fall, and the best ways to catch them. Can you guys believe that we're talking about the fall transition already? Man, this year has flown by, but I will be the first to say it. I'm happy for the cooler weather. You know, it's been a long, unseasonably hot summer. It's at least here in the southeast, out here in East Tennessee, and down in the south. But it has been a hot one, man. I love the cooler evenings. I love the cooler mornings. It's one of those things, right? In spring, you get that first cutting the grass, mowing the lawn, you're thinking bass fishing and baseball. In the fall, you got college football starting, NFL starting, and bass chasing bait. They just kind of go hand in hand. I always crack up, you know, anytime I'm driving through town and I see like a coffee shop or something. You know, a few years back, I referenced, if you are ordering a pumpkin spice latte or a pumpkin spice latte is in your wife or girlfriend's hand, you've probably are missed or a little late to that fall transition. And, you know, we still get those comments, you know, pumpkin spice latte time. It's true though. When you start thinking about trick-or-treating and all that stuff, it's just kind of that transition from summer hot to fall cool down. It's go time. It is bass fishing time, and I love it. You know, throwing on that hoodie early morning, it is just, I don't know, it's in my veins, it's in the blood, right? It just gets me jacked up about bass fishing. I love springtime, I love fall time, I love all fishing. No, it doesn't matter, you know, which month it is, but fall, this transition can be great. It can be tricky. We're going to cover some of those things, but it can be great. The water temps are cooling down with those cooler nights, and those fish start chasing bait. It's all about the bait fish. So we're going to cover some areas to look for, some favorite baits, just some key things to help you guys kind of dial in this summer to fall transition, because that's really the biggest thing, is people don't even realize when it starts, right? You know, 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago or so, out here in East Tennessee, we got about a week or so of really cool weather at night. And that's the #1 key. You know, it still might be super hot in the daytime. You're sweating, you're in your sun shirts, you're in your shorts, whatever. But if those overnight lows suddenly crash down into the 60s, maybe down into the 50s, even though your daytime temps are still in, you know, average for whatever summer's been, whether that's mid 80s or hundreds, right? Mid 90s to hundreds. Even though you still have those high temps during the day, it's all about the night, those cool downs at night. And as soon as you get that switch from, you know, those overnight lows dropping, light bulb, that you guys have to think about the fall transition, because it seems like the fish change overnight. As soon as you get that first cool down, which is what we've already had about a week and a half or so ago, it happens. Okay, so it was actually a couple weeks early this year for us. I don't know about the rest of the country. Pay attention, look at your weather patterns, but it was early for us, and these fish are going to start their fall transition. Now, the different types of fisheries, let's cover those, right? You have your highland reservoirs. This will be kind of a refresher course for some of you guys. Your highland reservoirs, typically deeper, typically clearer, usually a narrow dam, but a really tall dam. It's a lake or a waterway that is typically dammed up an old river system or whatever, and you have deep canyon, long river arms. You know, those types of fisheries, the transition doesn't happen nearly as quick as opposed to like a shallow grass fishery, you know, where those overnight lows will drop. Those shallower water lakes, the water temp will drop quicker and it'll kill off that grass and those fish will be moving. But typically your highland reservoirs, deep clear water, that transition will work or happen a little bit slower than some of the other types of fisheries. I love fishing highland reservoirs during that fall transition, during that, I mean, wide open fall bite, right? Typically in those, you know, you have either your back pockets where fish will kind of, you know, pass those secondary points, kind of like those spawning bays, right? Where we look for in spring, those fish will be in the very back of those bays with bait fish corralled up. You know, with the water cooling down, those fish typically congregate, they school up. So in summertime, you're gonna have fish kind of everywhere. They could be shallow, they'll deep, you know, mid, you know, 10, 12 foot range, wherever the grass is, wherever there's brush piles, they could be all over the place. But typically with the water temps dropping, those fish school up, and you can fish 9 of 10 of those spots and never get bit, but get to that 10th spot, and every fish that were in those 1 through 9 spots have moved and schooled up. So you blank, 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 and then blast them. So you have to cover water, but the fish are there. They're just not going to be as spread out or singles and ones and twos like they've been throughout the summer. But highland reservoirs with that clear, deeper water, like I said, that transition happens a little bit slower, but those fish are all about the bait. So typically those spawning bays in the very back, or areas where little offshoots near creek channels where you have those deep breaks where they can use that creek channel to get back into a little cut and kind of corral those bait fish. Those are going to be key. And then if they're not there, work your way back, just like we worked our way in for that winter to spring transition. Now we're going to be working our way out to the main lake points and open water stuff, main body stuff. We're going to work our way back through those secondary points, keeping our eyes in the back of those little cuts for blow-ups, little ripples, activity, and then eventually we'll work our way out to that main body. And, you know, off in the distance, you'll see them going crazy, blowing up. I love chasing those offshore fish. You know, you can have that trolling motor on, gotta blow up over here, have that trolling motor on high, whether you're throwing a crankbait or a top water, and just cocked and loaded, ready to fire when those fish come up foaming and schooling. It is a ton of fun. Now those deeper fish can be a little bit harder to pattern because they're pelagic. They're out there just chasing that bait ball, swimming around with it. But when they do come up and show themselves, you can get well in a hurry. You can have some awesome fishing. So lowland reservoirs, that was highland reservoirs. Lowland reservoirs, a little bit different. Typically you have a really long dam and a short dam. Typically there's not a lot of long river arms or deep, steep canyon arms. You're gonna have more humps and saddles, and in the back of the coves, you're gonna have less steep banks, more subtle transitions, which is good. You probably have been fishing in the backs of those little arms and stuff, little offshoots all summer long in the grass. Same type of deal with the cooler nights. That grass is gonna start dying off. So really key into that lively, green, healthy looking grass. Because, you know, you might have been fishing a grass flat that was a few hundred yards long. As that thing starts to shrink down, those fish are going to pull to the liveliest grass. And then eventually, whatever hard cover or hard structure was in that bay or in that backwater, they're going to pull to that. So whether that's a tree stump, a sunk boat, you know, a rock pile, whatever they pulled to first in that spring transition, check those areas, because as that grass dies, they're going to pull out of that grass and head to that hard structure. And then same thing, you can work your way out. If they're not in the backs chasing bait, work your way out along those secondary points. Again, keep your eye out. Always be scanning the lake, the horizon, if you will, for blowups and just activity. You know, whether it's birds. Birds are a huge tip off. You know, I might be fishing the mouth of a big backwater, but I look up and I see birds diving in the back. One less bird. They're diving in the back. I'm pulling that trolling motor and I'm getting back there to that activity, because that's telling me there's a bait ball back there. And again, like we've learned, if there's bait, there's bass. So You know, always be looking. So highland reservoirs, lowland reservoirs, kind of cover those. Let's talk about river systems. Tennessee River, Gunnersville, Kentucky Lake, Chickamauga, you know, lots and lots of water movement, lots of current. Typically they start out here, they start that winter drawdown. So we're gonna be losing water elevation, right? That water is gonna be dropping. So some of those, two less birds. Some of those fish are gonna pull out with that initial drawdown. They're gonna pull to the mouths, the openings of the backwaters to the main river, the Tennessee River, or whatever river you're on. They're gonna pull to those openings. They're gonna use the deeper creek channels to, like a highway, to go. They're gonna stop along that hard cover that we talked about in the spring, that they probably transitioned from the deep water as they're going to the back. They're just gonna do it in reverse. And then again, a lot of these big backwaters have a ton of grass. This one I'm in today, not so much. They came in here and nuked it with the airboats. But we do have some little grass back here, but we don't have the vast grass flats that we typically have. If you find yourself on some of those, work your way across those quickly. Throw in, I don't want to talk about baits yet. We'll talk about baits towards the end, but throwing stuff quickly to cover water. You know, Matt and I were talking about it the other day. How do you approach a giant grass flat? You know, with them dropping the water, or whether you're out on the West Coast and you're in reservoirs and they're dropping the water, sometimes you get huge fluctuations in water levels. But if you have a ton of grass, you know, how do you approach that? Because everything looks good. You know, Matt, you know, one of his favorite ways is just burning a frog on top, just casting and burning it, not even walking it and waiting for some activity, waiting for a fish to blow up and miss, and then he'll slow down. And typically those fish will stay in those same areas for a little bit of time, you know, whether it's a week, a month, or all summer long. But fall time, as these fish are moving, you got to be moving too, because like I said earlier, in the summer, there was fish there's fish all over. But with that cooler water, now it's all about schooling up and chasing that bait. So if you are on that grass, find the grass edges that are closer to deeper water, that look lively, that just have some activity. I like to describe it as like popping or flickering sounds. You'll hear bluegill or baitfish kind of popping the surface. That's telling me that that area of grass is lively. And then of course, out on the actual river, you're gonna wanna fish your eddies, your breaks, that sort of stuff, you know, out of the current, the main current. And then big transitioning or turns, bends in the river, you know, you want to fish that slower water. Highland, lowland river systems. Let's talk ponds and natural lakes. I'll put ponds in with natural lakes. Again, typically, for the most part, natural lakes, they're fairly featureless. There's not a lot of deep river arms or bluff walls and canyons and that sort of stuff. It's fairly, you know, if there's rock piles or there's rock shoreline, everybody knows about it. They kind of get fished a lot. But out offshore, fairly featureless. Look for those little changes, those little subtle depth changes, whether it's just a foot or two. Those really matter. And then again, that hard structure. If you can find that stuff, you know, sunk boats. I found so many sunk boats out here, out west. You know, I don't know what it is, but hard sunk boats, hard cover seems to hold fish. Rock piles, brush piles, that sort of stuff. And then as far as ponds, typically ponds, whether you're fishing like a golf course type pond, fairly shallow, fairly flat, typically lots of grass, you know, those fish, same thing, treat that grass like a lowland reservoir. Look for that better grass, that livelier grass, that alive grass with the bluegill and panfish in it. And then if it's a deeper pond, typically I will fish kind of that rock transition towards the dam, that little bit deeper water, kind of like the Highland Reservoir, kind of deeper, clearer pond. Gonna fish that more stable water temps. And then eventually in wintertime, those fish are gonna pull all the way to that deeper water. But this is a great time to be fishing, guys. It can be hard to find them. You might have been on an epic frog bite or an epic topwater bite, cranking bite, whatever it was, but all of a sudden, boom, we get that transition. We get the different temps, the lows at night, and those fish are on the move. And you don't want to be left behind, right? You want to stay ahead. So continue to move. This is a great time of year to throw moving baits. We're going to talk about that here shortly, but remember to move. If you're throwing a drop shot, or you're shaking a shaky head, or dragging a jig, and you're not getting bit, you're not covering a lot of water, you're fishing where you caught them a couple weeks ago or a month ago or whenever, pick up that slow moving stuff, put down that slow moving stuff, pick up the fast moving stuff, and start covering water. Those key areas that we talked about, you know, those secondary points, the little cuts. I don't know if you guys can see this, the little cuts, right? This is a perfect area. I've caught tons of fish right here because this is a big bay. You guys can't see this, but it's a big bay. But right here, the little notch, right? Just 20, 30, 40 feet, you know, 40 yards deep. And they can sit right here on the point, and they'll push that bait back there and hold it. And they'll be there for a few days. And just little changes in the shoreline like that will allow those fish to kind of corral and fence those bait fish in, and they'll topwater crankbaits. They all work great. So that's kind of where those fish go during this fall transition. Obviously, wintertime, they're going to be, you know, we'll talk about that here in, I don't know, a couple months or so. But fall is a great time to be out in the water. It's more comfortable. It's not nearly as hot. The fish are active. You get more oxygen in the water. You know, all through summer, the water temps get high. We had water temps here that were in the low to mid 90s, right? So you get low oxygen in the water. With the grass and with the lower air temps, the lower water temps, now you get more life, if you will, in the water, more oxygen, and those fish are moving around, and it can be so much fun. So some of my favorite baits, yeah, I just did my top 5 baits for the month of September, just I don't know, a week or two ago. This I'm going to expand just a little bit because I got shallow baits and I have deep baits. So depending on the types of fishery you're in, the types of fisheries you're fishing, completely different, right? Some days you might be needing to throw a DT 16 or a 20, and some days you might find yourself in the grass throwing a frog. So I got, I don't know, what do I got? 8 or 9 or 10 baits here for you, depending on the different types of fisheries, and then depending on the different types of bass you're going after. You know, typically I love chasing spotted bass this time of the year. They're kind of the craziest, right? They're all over the place. They can be some of the hardest fish to pattern because they move so much. I mean, smallmouth move a ton too, but especially those big spotted bass that are out there over, you know, they're suspended over 150, 200 feet of water. They're 10 feet down, just in open water. How do you pattern those? But I love chasing those fish and throwing top water for them. But it depends on the different types of fisheries and the different types of fish you're chasing. You know, I have caught largemouth in those same scenarios, but not nearly as many. Those spots are crazy and they're a ton of fun. Man, this breeze feels good. I don't know if you guys can hear that or not, but it feels like fall. All right, let's talk deep fisheries first. Let's talk your highland reservoirs and your lowland reservoirs, and typically offshore fish, because the shallow stuff, when I talk about the shallower stuff, that will cover kind of the backs of pockets on the deeper lakes, the highland reservoirs and such. But you know, those are interchangeable. So the more specific deep baits this time of the year, hands down, I'm cranking. If I am looking for a reaction bite and I'm throwing stuff at a depth, I am speed cranking. This is the Tactical DD. That's a crankbait Matt and I designed. You guys are probably very familiar with this bait. This is exactly what this is designed for. It's a tighter wobble. You know, during the summer, we're probably throwing the Strike King to 6XD or something like that. Now that we're getting into that cooler water, cooler weather, and we want to move fast, we're throwing the tighter wobble stuff, the stuff that we can burn, pause, burn, pause. You know, 7, 8 to 1 gear ratio reels we are burning this thing fast. Again, these fish are chasing. So if you're down there in that 12 to 18 foot range, this guy right here is my #1 crankbait. My #2 crankbait, if I want to slow down just a little, or I'm fishing brush piles, you know, that hard structure as that grass dies back and those fish are pulling out to those brush piles, that Rapala, that DT16 is key. This is more of a, it's not a true suspending crank, but it's not as a high float, so you can actually get it down right at the tops of those brush piles or whatever that hard structure you're fishing, and then pause it, and this thing's gonna kind of stay right in their face. I've caught so many fish on the pause with this thing just suspended in their face, but this is another great crankbait this time of the year. What else do I have? You guys like throwing spoons? You know, jigging spoons can be absolutely lights out. You guys ever heard the term lasagna? Like looking at our 2D sonar, you ever heard the term lasagna where there's just lines just stacked layers upon layers upon layers, and then you have the bait ball above it? Those are schools of bass underneath the bait ball. And whether you're vertically jigging a spoon or throwing a flutter spoon where you're hopping it, letting it fall, and it kind of does this, you know, acting more like a dying baitfish, a spoon is killer this time of the year. I like this guy. This is that Nichols flutter spoon, shattered glass color. That is an awesome, awesome spoon. And if you are doing the jig, like the vertical jigging spoon, we used to do that a ton out on the west coast, you know, Berryessa, that's those types of lakes, Orville, Shasta, that dust spoon. Actually, Nichols licensed it now, so that's also a Nichols product. Nichols dust spoon. That thing is the best jigging spoon that I've ever used. But whether it's a flutter spoon where you're mimicking a dying baitfish, or you're vertically spooning, you know, doing the same thing, a spoon this time of the year can be so much fun. You know, some of these fish can be deep. You know, as they start getting into that, chasing that baitfish and those balls, and they go deep, the fish sometimes go deep too, and that's where you have to go. I go away from the flutter spoon, and that's when I'll throw the jigging spoon in that like 25 to 50 foot range, okay? But a spoon, what else do I have for you? A lot of these can be interchangeable depth-wise. 2 more for you. The spy bait, okay? I didn't throw a spy bait all summer long unless I was up north chasing smallmouth in clear, colder water. But a spy bait this time of the year works really, really well. Last fall, I absolutely smashed on the Duo Realis, the spin bait, the 80, the 70, great spy baits. The Spro is another great one. I didn't even bring it, but again, I'll link all this stuff down below in the video description for you guys. But a spy bait, I talked about it last fall. It's kind of that bait that kind of got overlooked with the jig and minnow type deal, but it's a killer bait for these fish that are out there chasing schools of bait. Having the 2 props, counter spinning, adding that little bit of shimmy. It's a hard bait, but you fish it just like your 2.8 Kitech or your favorite swim bait, swammer, whatever it may be, and that thing does that side to side shimmy, and they just eat it. So don't be a sleeper on the spy bait this time of the year, especially with those fish that are visibly chasing fish. All right, last but not least, this guy right here. I used to throw the Sabil, the magic swimmer, but this guy right here, this is the Spro sashimi swimmer. I don't know what happened with that Sabil. I think it got bought out by Berkeley. I can't remember, but this is a multi-joint hard bait. Real tight wobble, real fast swim. So if you're a guy that loves throwing or chasing those offshore fish or those schooling fish, this bait right there is a really cool bait. Caught a bunch of fish as of late on that guy right there. And then of course the topwater. We'll use this bait to transition to the shallower fish, but The topwater offshore. A lot of times we'll be fishing our favorite main lake point, or maybe we're fishing our favorite secondary point as we're working our way back out, but then we see those fish blowing up. You guys know that we love this guy right here. That is the Shower Blows 105. You know, you can throw the bigger one, you can throw the smaller ones. I like that guy, especially for my general location out here in East Tennessee. That 105, the spots eat it, smallmouth love it, and the largemouth choke it. It's just a bait that works. But there's a lot of great topwater walking baits. So pick your favorite walking topwater bait. That mega bass is a really good one. I mean, there's the Giant Dog X, and then what else? Those are probably my two favorite. But whatever your favorite walking style topwater bait, make sure you have that thing rigged up and ready to go. Typically, I like the chrome. Again, it's all about that flash, the baitfish this time of the year. But if you can throw something in that bone or chrome bone, something like that, I think you guys will really enjoy the fall topwater bait. Okay, so transitioning shallow, we talked about the deeper stuff. Now let's say you're on a grass fishery and you're fishing that fall transition. 100% I'm starting with a frog. I know that bite's going away, and I love frog fishing. I love throwing the heavy, extra heavy rods with your 50 and 65 pound braid tied up to your favorite frog. That's that Spro bronze eye right there. Or the Jackal Caera, the little bit smaller finesse frog. I know that that's a dying bite. It's a bite that's going away that I won't be able to do until basically next summer and fall, right? So I love throwing a frog. I'm gonna be looking for that livelier grass. I'm gonna be fishing the backs of the cuts where they can blow up and corral those fish. A frog. You'll see the blowups in the mats. You'll see the activity, and there's just nothing like getting that slurp bite or that blow up bite and you setting that hook, and now you're just doing everything you can to get that fish out of that grass mat. A frog is my go-to bait. And then I'm gonna give you guys two baits, a chatterbait or an underspin. Okay, if you find yourself fishing around thick grass or dying grass and it's too kind of iffy to get that chatterbait through there, you got a lot of dying grass, whether it's eelgrass or you know, whatever it is, right? Whatever types of grass, but it's dying, it's on the surface, or you just keep getting it around the blade of your chatterbait. That's when I will go with a weedless flashy swimmer with your favorite swim bait on there, whether that's a swammer, a Kitech, a pro swimmer, whatever it is. I like the swammer this time of the year. It's got a lot wider kick than the Kitech. I like the Kitech, more of a subtle kick in the wintertime, colder water. I like that swammer. But whatever your favorite soft swim bait is, paddle tail swim bait, I like throwing it weedless on a flashy swimmer. You get the benefit of being weedless, so you don't get hung up as much. And then obviously having that flash and vibration. Again, these fish are schooled up on hundreds, thousands, if not tens of thousands bait fish, right? And you want your bait to look a little bit different so they can key in on your bait and pick yours out of the lineup. So whether it's a flashy swimmer or the tactical, the mini our mini underspin with an exposed hook, if you're fishing along the grass edges, that thing works killer out there in the deeper water as well. But a chatterbait and an underspin are kind of my 1-2 if I'm fishing around the grass. Obviously, if the grass isn't too thick and it's not dying too bad, you can pop that thing free and then keep you know, keep doing the chatterbait shimmy. Two of my favorite chatterbaits, obviously the jackhammer with a spunk shad, and then the Z-Man, the Evo Elite with the painted blades with a spunk shad. I just love that electric shad looking profile. Again, bait fish, right? For me, it's all about the bait fish. Now, if you find yourself on a fishery where it's crawdads and panfish, bluegill, you know, match those colors. Throw your fire craws, or throw your darker red craw chatterbaits, or throw your green pumpkins with some gold or chartreuse, you know, in the skirts, and you guys will do just fine. As far as topwater up shallow, again, we're talking about moving quick. I kind of gave you that scenario before, offshore, walking, you know, your favorite topwater bait in those in those schools of fish blown up on bait. But if you're just covering water, you're chucking and winding, it's really hard to beat a whopper flopper. You know, something you can chuck out there, plop, 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 right along that grass line, right along that shade line, right along that wall where they might have those fish corralled. You're covering water, you're looking for those active fish. And again, you can fish this fast, you can fish it slow, you can pause it, it won't sink, but a whopper plopper is killer this time of the year. And then let's go with a fluke. Soft plastic jerkbait. If you are fishing for those fish out there in the deeper water, I like throwing a fluke or whiplash shad with the nose hook. You put that screw lock in the face and you take your favorite wacky rig or drop shot hook and rig that through that eye of the owner twist lock. And then again, you're just hopping it and letting it fall like a dying bait fish, a lot like the flutter spoon. And then on the flip side, if you're in the grass, you're shallow, you're fishing around the grass, you know, having it rigged, Texas rig with a super line hook, like a 3/0 or 4/0 super line hook, gives a little bit more body weight right here in the keel, and you can get real aggressive with it, and you can fish it in and around that grass. And if you find that lively grass, you will find those fish that will come out and eat the fluke. And then the very last bait I like to throw as that grass kind of disappears and we start losing that grass, or maybe there's areas like this where there isn't any grass, but they have that bait pinned up and they're not coming up and eating top water anymore. They're not showing themselves. I like to go with a square bill, something I can move fast, something that doesn't dive too deep and get hung up. This is one of my favorites, the Demiki BTC 50. I'm talking less than a foot of water, 2 foot, 1 foot, 6 inches. This thing gets it done. The Spro, the Fat John 50 is another killer bait for that category. But guys, whether you're fishing a clear Highland reservoir or a murky Florida grass fishery, I'm not going to use Florida. Florida really has 2 seasons. They kind of have hot and hotter, or summer and summer-er, I guess. Let's go with a lake that has more, 4 seasons. So whether it's a clear lake in California where you start having that grass die back, or you're out here on the Tennessee River in East Tennessee, here are the baits that work given those different scenarios. But just remember, the fish are going to be on the move. You need to be moving with them too. Fish fast, fish efficiently, and you guys will find where those fish are, right? We kind of know where they're going. We know where their winter haunts are, right? Hopefully you fished last winter and you kind of know where they're going to end up in a couple or a few months. But now it's finding from where they were in the summer and where they're going, where those bait fish are going. That's kind of the puzzle pieces, and we got to find where we are along that transition. Guys, as always, appreciate the support. If you have questions, please leave those down below in the comment section. I'll try to get those as soon as possible. But don't be late on the pumpkin spice latte, okay? Don't be late on that fall transition. It is happening. I saw a comment the other day when I started talking about cooler weather coming, and someone out here was like, yeah, it hasn't happened here yet. It's too hot. What you didn't realize is those overnight lows have changed, 15, 20 degrees sometimes. It gets cooler, and those fish feel that, they sense it, and it's go time. So if you haven't already, start thinking about that fall transition, and fall is a great time to get out and catch a bunch of bass. But again, thank you for watching. If you like this video or learned something from this video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and we will see you guys on the next video.